Welcome to Wealth Well Done. Together, we'll cover a wide range of important topics surrounding money and the impact it has on our lives. From the sophisticated and highly valuable planning techniques of the ultra wealthy to the commonly underutilized biblical teachings. Together, we'll work to improve our relationship with money and our effectiveness in stewarding it well. Here's your host, Eric Scoville.
All right, welcome to the 76th episode of the Wealth Well Done podcast, where we are focusing on tactical, practical, and biblical ways to help you do your wealth well done. Last week we had a little bit of a challenging one. I did a solo cast talking about the concept of honestly questioning salvation, which is it's a fun, safe topic that, of course, everyone is real comfortable discussing, especially when we live in a culture where that has been, even amongst Christians, that is kind of a taboo thing of really trying to ask questions there. So if you found that offensive, please understand that my heart was know my heart. My heart is not to just go and swing around with the sledgehammer, but at the same time, it's honestly share with you the stuff that I am feeling in my spirit as I'm reading the word and digging in more. And if what I'm seeing does have some relevancy, then I don't want people to feel safe while they're sitting right where the enemy wants them. If you got a challenge to that and you want to tell me how I'm wrong or something else, then please, with scripture, please share with me. Share with there's lots of ways you can reach out to me, whether it's in the chats on YouTube, or if it is you reach out directly through our website or through LinkedIn. But I'd love to hear what your kind of counter is to what we talked about last week. And if you liked it, then I would recommend that you listen to September 30th service from Mercy Culture. Mercy Culture is a very bold church down in Texas that is unashamedly promoting the gospel. And so I would encourage you to check out what that sermon was. I was telling a good friend of mine who shared with me that I will never be the same after that hour of listening to that sermon. So today, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I want to get back to some more focus on some financial components here. So we are going to talk about estate planning. We're going to start kind of simple and build up as we go with this. Some things are a little bit more elementary, but they're good to make sure you understand why you have what you have or why you should get something in place. But then as we get into it, we'll get a little bit more complex and a little more theological as well. With estate planning, what this is referring to is the way that you set up your estate, all of everything that belongs to you, and how you handle that when you pass. And so whether it's when you pass or when you and your spouse pass, there are certain things that you want to make sure that you're handling well. If you do nothing, then it goes to the court. It goes through probate. Even if you have a will, it will still go through probate, and that will then is what the court will use as their guidance upon how they're deciding how to handle your affairs. A will is going to, probate is going to be a lengthy process, typically expensive. You have attorneys who are going to collect a sizable fee for their probate involvement. And so basically a will is still involved as we do more complex estate planning, but all it is might be such things as a pour over will. But I don't want any client of mine having just a will in place and not having a trust. So inside when we do an estate plan, you're going to have things like a pour over will. You're going to have a power of attorney for the healthcare, power of attorney for financial. This is where you get to say who gets to make the decision on your behalf to what to do with your accounts and how to handle things for you, or who's going to decide whether to keep you on life support or not. But then the first main thing that we're doing is in establishing a living trust. Living trust is revocable. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. It does things like set the guardian. So if I'm going to talk as if you have minor children here first, and then we'll go on with this. But um, so if you have children who are under the age of 18, a part of what you do with the living trust, or if you have a children with a child with a disability who still needs a legal guardian, that's what a trust does. A trust can set the guardians. And a couple things to note with this is that guardian can change. You don't have to tell the person that you're going to that you're selecting to be the guardian that they've been selected as a guardian. You certainly can. There's a lot of great reasons to do that. Good reason to have those conversations, um, but you don't have to. I can tell you that we have not shared with anyone who our guardian is going to be, but we've also changed a number of times too. And so, as we grow, as people around us change, as different life events happen, we what's important to us changes as well. And so, you don't have to just list one person. We have four people listed in order of first this couple, then this couple, then this couple, and then this couple. And so we have that in there. And like I said, that's moved around a little bit over the years. Um, in that you can also you can set some guidelines of what it is that you're looking for out of them. And so if so we have in ours that we want them to be, I've got it pulled up right here, so they would be a guardian so long as their current marriage is still intact. And we wouldn't want our kids going to be with someone if they've gone through divorce. Um, but also, even if the if one of the spouses of that couple has passed away, that doesn't mean they're any worse of a person. It just means that they no longer have the type of home that we are hoping our kids get raised in. So we have it in there that specifically says that if we were to pass, then we want it to, this to be this couple first and then this couple. But that's only as long as their current marriage is intact and that both spouses are still alive. Um, we also say that we want to make sure that they would keep all of our kids together. We have some subjective criteria in there that we want the person who's evaluating this to assess that they have a good relationship with their own kids. If something's changed where they've entered into a toxic relationship with their own kids, well, then that's kind of an issue that we don't want our children in that home. We want God to be number one in their life. We want them to be attending a good Christian church. We want them to have financial stability. We've got plenty of assets set aside in life insurance and investments, and we don't want someone to take on the guardianship of our children because they see a payday coming or be who's irresponsible with money. So we have some of the things like that in place, and you can set your own criteria of what you're looking for there. You can then choose the trustees, and a trustee is the person who's in charge of really administering the trust, who's in charge of the assets involved with this. When uh, when a beneficiary of the trust says, "I want to have some of these assets for to go start a business or to go buy a new truck or whatever the case might be," the trustee will then get to decide, is that something that is within the limits of the trust. And so the trustee role is really important because they're also, especially with minor children, they're also hopefully going to be responsible in helping mentor that child into a maturity in life, maturity especially in their financial dealings. And so they don't have to be a financial expert. They can hire a financial advisor to manage the assets. They can hire a property manager to handle the real estate that's in the portfolio. So they don't have to be an expert in that field. They're going to be the ones who you trust with the wisdom and maturity to work with a financial advisor or work with a property manager in those cases, but also to work with the kids, and to make good decisions around the money. Um, if you go to a normal lawyer for this, they will. This is a transaction. This is something that they have a template that they'll have you fill out. They've got boilerplate language in there. So you tell them what you want. They'll fill in the blanks with that, and they'll send it back to you to have you sign it. Most of the trusts that get started, they get paid for, but they don't actually get executed because most people fail to actually follow through with even the signing of their trust and getting it witnessed properly with a notary or whatever the state requires. Um, but Rarely, anyways, with this, rarely do people stop and think about what is the best way uh, to do the trust from a beneficiary's point of view. We think about how to do it well from a tax perspective, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But we also rarely do a good job of thinking of what is going to be in the best interest of the beneficiary. So we're going to come back to that a little bit too. I just want you to understand that part of what we're talking about is absolutely, down the middle of the fairway for if you were to engage with a attorney to help you do a simple estate plan. Some of it's going to be a little bit outside the box. um, Other things that a trust does is allows you to define who gets what. And so it doesn't have to be equal. And we definitely talk about fair is not equal. If you have one child who's a missionary and one child who's a highly paid lawyer, then giving them the same amount of assets might not actually be the fair thing to do. So equal does not necessarily mean right there. Um, and timing is also really important with this. So the the idea of if you were to pass, when would you want your beneficiaries to get access to the money is something else that we think about. Of there's one thing that if you don't say anything in a will, your beneficiaries get the assets when they turn 18. And most of you probably don't view 18-year-olds as wise and responsible enough to handle a significant windfall of money. You can set it up that they get, this much at 25, 35, 45. That's pretty common. Or 20, 25, and 30, 25, 30, 35. All those parameters. We have ours set up that see if I can remember this correctly off the top of my head, that I think our kids would get 10% at age 20. It's either 25 or 28. I should be able to pull it up here because they get 10% then, and it might be 28. And the idea is I want them to go out and be enterprising, go do something on their own, make something of themselves, and not just count on the money that they have coming in. So even after school, and if they get school paid for, or we're going to talk about college here too, um, I want them to go out and make something of themselves there, and not rely on money to be the one, the money from the trust to live off of. So they're only going to get 10% of it at that age. Then they get another, I think, 25% of the remaining balance at age 33. And again, those are key times there of why we have that type of separation. And then the remaining balance at age 40. Some people disagree with that. That's fine. That's just what my wife and I have talked about, and what we think is it would, if in the event that this happens, we hope it's just a waste of time and just a thought exercise that was proved to be pointless. That we don't ever have to execute this. But if so, then this is where we think would tee them up best to go after they're producing their own lives and letting these funds be something that just enhances what they are becoming, or how the Lord is shaping them. You can also decide under trust, put conditions on there of how or when kids could access money. And so the trust is going to make sure it takes care of their health. It's going to make sure that it takes care of their education. You can decide how much education, whether this is through an undergraduate degree or through a doctorate or anything else. You can set specific parameters on that. We've seen people say, we'll pay for all of room and board for undergrad, and we'll pay for certain percentage of this through graduate school. Or there's different things you can do there. But you can also say, I want them to get access to the funds once they've completed a master's degree, or I want them to get funds only after, if they do a drug test, they pass a drug test every 30 days, or after they've served so many community service hours. Like you can get really creative of with the trust of deciding what is in the best interest of helping, not control them from the grave, because that's where trusts go really wrong. But how do we, if I'm not there, if I'm not there, my wife's not there to raise our children, what are things that what are things that, little control measures that we can put in place to help prompt them into the things that will help shape their character if they grew up for a certain percentage of their life without their parents. And so that's really what we're trying to think of there. Next thing that we try to add to our trust is a cover letter. And you're not going to find a lot of attorneys who are going to be suggesting this or maybe even like the idea of it. Although a number of them that we have done this with have seemingly adopted it, but also definitely gave credit to the clients for doing that, and they liked it. So what a cover letter does, or at least how we've set ours up, is to speak directly to the trustees and to the guardian. It doesn't say the name because, like we said, the name might change, or client or couple one might decline for whatever reason. Couple two might have become ineligible for whatever reason, and then it's couple three. And so this is just saying to the trustees and the guardians. And then we get into this a little bit here. It's not what this does is it helps make sure that you're communicating your wishes to the people who are going to be responsible for the such a like the what a significant weight and a significant responsibility that would be, whether your kids are 15 and almost to adulthood, or 5. um, what a heavy burden that is, and we want to do the best job of trying to communicate some of those wishes very clearly to them, outside of the legal boilerplate language that's in the trust document that most people don't read, and even if they do, they can't understand. um, so I thought it would be beneficial to you, the listeners, to have me read a template that we have designed, which is basically our cover letter for our trust, with a few names taken out of it, and that we use as a template for our clients. So I'm going to read that to you here, and this is not copywritten. You can use any of this, all of this. You don't have to use it at all. You don't have to have a cover letter. You can, but if you're going to do a cover letter, you want to talk to your attorney. Make sure you're not saying anything in there that's contradictory to the trust, because that creates an issue. Um, but this can be something that enhances the the trust, and enhances, even if your children are adults, you can still do a cover letter into a trust of stuff that they're going to get whenever you pass, that shares your thoughts. Hopefully you're communicating your thoughts to your children without the need of a cover letter on an estate plan. But anyway, there's just an extra opportunity to talk about with them what you hope they do with the funds, and you're not putting strict controls on them, or here's why you have strict controls, on whatever that might be. So let me read mine, and then it'll let you get a little taste of what you can do with this. To the guardians and trustee for our children. You can imagine how difficult this is to write. Yet if you are reading this, then we are comforted to know we've taken the steps to prepare for this as best possible. Our faith is deep and sincere, so we are confident we have moved on to spend eternity with our Heavenly Father. Side note, see last week's episode, and maybe I should be a little less confident. We can imagine there will be sorrow, but we ask you to always point our children back to this truth. As the guardians and trustee for our children, we have asked a tall order of you. Of the many great people in our lives, we feel you are the best suited to take this on, and truly, words cannot describe our gratitude to you for doing so. Similar to the difficulty of describing our love of our children, Similar to the difficulty of describing our love for our children is our appreciation to you for picking up where we left off and preparing and launching our kids forward to run their own races for Christ Jesus. As you know, helping them build a foundation in their faith is of the highest priority to us. This was woven into nearly every aspect of our lives, and we hope you will do the same. Below are some of our specific wishes for our children. To the guardians, we ask that you take these into account as you incorporate our children into your family. To the trustee, we ask that you heed the spirit of our requests and that you help facilitate the development and enhancement of our children's lives. It is not our intent to control from the grave, but rather to pass along the desires and protections we have deemed important from our time raising them thus far. When it comes to schooling as minor children, our request is that they are in a Christian schooling environment. Homeschooling is preferable, but we trust the guardian's discernment in how it relates to their own kids. It would likely make sense to have our kids be in the same environment as yours, so we trust your judgment. When it comes to higher education, we were both blessed during our time in college, but we do view it as unnecessary. We can only imagine the changes that will take place by the time our children have reached a college age. So again, we ask you all for your discernment. You all meaning guardians and trustee here. Had we been there to raise our kids to this point, our plan was to bring them up in an entrepreneurial home with the love and respect for the freedom and responsibility that come from serving King Jesus in your own business. We also wanted them to know that real world experience is far more valuable than any classroom knowledge. With that established, we intended to let each child decide his or her own path. We would find it a great use of funds to hire consultants and mentors in the fields they express interest to help them see and learn from the inside of a profession. When it comes to their medical needs, we ask that they remain patients of, and so I give the name of our pediatrician in the city that he's in. We ask that this person, who's a chiropractor in blank city, be paid as a consultant to establish a care plan for each child and to provide guidance on any significant health or medical decisions. If that person is no longer in practice or not a reason or um, not a reasonable choice for or not a excuse me, that looks like that's wrong. Should be not a choice for any reason. I'm gonna delete that right now. um, then we request blank person here to select the new primary care doctor. It is our request that no vaccines or flu shots are given to our children until they are 18 and can choose for themselves. We are also absolutely against any gender altering intervention. It's incredibly embarrassing that we have to put that in there, but we didn't. To help our children work through this, both now and into their adult years, we believe strong Christian counseling and mentoring are needed. At the availability and willingness of these two couples, we request that our kids spend time with one couple here who's more of a life mentor and one couple here who's a Christian counselors at least once per month. We ask this because of the special relationship we have with each of these couples and our trust in the wisdom with how they view life. These visits can be casual and relational, or they can be clinical and targeted to help our kids through trauma and uncover the call Jesus has in their life. Please pay them well for doing so. If a child, whether minor or adult, is showing signs of mental instability or drug use, we ask that the guardian, trustee, and that Christian counselor work together on an appropriate intervention and limitations to trust assets. Again, not we don't want to say, hey, they need to pass a drug test this often or anything else. We just want to we have wise people around us. We got to trust their judgment. So that's why we leave that a little bit up in the air. We leave that for them to decide. We ask the guardians to include our extended families in the kids' lives. Our parents are very close to them, and we prefer that to continue. There are some guidelines, though, and please, and then here it says, please consult that Christian counselor for further details. So if someone has issues inside their family or something else where they say, that person can't be around them unsupervised or whatever that might be, then it's okay to throw that in here or just reference them back to that counselor. When it comes to the way that trust assets are used, we view ourselves as stewards of God's resources and therefore accountable for our decisions. That said, we also believe money is a tool not to cling to. The Lord has abundantly blessed us. We have placed a lot of money into a separate fund to be donated. The funds left in the kids' portion of the trust are to be used. We want them to have great Christian institutions helping them with their development. We want them to enjoy great life experiences through travel and Christian concerts. We want them to have great Christian coaches and mentors to guide them in a way we would have. Please help them to make wise decisions, but do not be frugal in the use of funds. Again, that's not something that can be spelled out real clearly in legal language. So that's why in the cover letter, I'm expressing that as not something that is going to be held too strongly, but just communicating the spirit of what we want to the trustee. When it comes to travel, the safety of our children, especially regarding human trafficking, is critical. Under that awareness, we would love for our children to experience the beauty of God's creation. Please balance leisurely and luxurious travel with missions trips to gain perspective on the blessed life we have and our call to help others. When it comes to sports or hobbies, it is our preference that they are not the major focus of our children's lives. Sports were instrumental in both of our lives growing up, but we both lacked balance and perspective. Whether sport, music, or another hobby, the enjoyment, belonging, and life lessons they teach are wonderful. We want them to be part of our kids' lives. Our request here is that they do not dominate their lives and drown out the emphasis on relationship with Jesus. Finally, and most importantly, please keep church and church family a priority in their lives. Please help them to engage in charitable activities and see the fruit of serving others. Please help them to grow their belief in the power of the Holy Spirit and grow in their own spiritual gifts. Please make sure they keep and read the letters we have written to each of them that are kept in the safe. From the bottom of our hearts, we are eternally grateful to you for picking up this torch and carrying it for us. So hopefully that is helpful to you. If you would like to, um, if you would like to have a copy of that template and just have me, uh, email that to you rather than you trying to transcribe it. Just let us know. Happy to share that. Okay. Next thing here, so you want to really think about within a trust, what's going to be best for my spouse. Um, if she survives and I don't, what would be best for her? And so we got to think about from a lifestyle standpoint, how do I help take care of the life that she's accustomed to? What do I bring to the table? So now we're getting into what we need to think about, how much money we need to have in there. And I'm going to walk through an example for you. So what do I bring to the table? The income. I'm handy, so I do a lot of home and vehicle repairs, life lessons. I'm bring safety to have a man in the house there. Bring leadership, and how would these things be found or given to our kids or given to my wife if I'm not there? um, thinking about for my kids, what would I want for them if I wasn't there to raise them? Would I want them to go to college? And again, college, I think today it's becoming more clear to most people as they see all the absolute stupidity going on in these different schools. If you listen to that Mercy Culture one, you'll find out that even at Texas Christian University, they've got rainbow flags posted down the hallways of the religious portion of that, and saying that Jesus isn't the only way. And I'm sorry if you don't think Jesus is the only way, then you've got to stop calling yourself a Christian. Otherwise, you're being deceived by the devil. um, so, like I said, we don't really want our kids to go to college. But would you want your kids to go to college? Do you want your kids to get involved with missions work? Do you want your kids to have mentors? Do you want them to have seed capital to help them start a business, or to help them, make a down payment on a house or something else like that too? So you need to think about those things as you're starting to think about how much assets do I want in my estate. And so as we do this, I wanted to do an exercise here before we wrap this episode up of how much should I leave? How much should I make sure is in my estate if I were to pass? And this is different for the husband than the wife. It's a different calculation. Um, there's a lot of similar overlap, but there are differences in here to consider. So I'm going to just walk through an example, some stuff that you want to make sure you accomplish when you are thinking about this. If you were to pass, let's say if you are the male who handles all of the finances and investments, that's the example here. You're going to want to pay off any debt you have. You might want to simplify your investments. You might want to simplify a cash flow plan for your family, and then maybe have a fund for each child's development. See that above the comments we just made about missions work, mentors, seed capital. So the example is, if you had $500,000 left on your mortgage, you had a investment portfolio that included some private equity, some rental properties, stocks that you manage on your own, and then have an investment account with an advisor, 401k, that kind of thing. And that total is worth 2.5 million. For salary and income, you're making $350,000. You have expenses of about $18,000 per month of after tax expenses, and you have about 2,500 of that is going toward paying down that mortgage. You have no college accounts set up. You have three kids that are 13, 11, and 8. You're 42 years old. You have a 40-year-old wife. And so now, how do we decide how much money to give away or how much money to set aside? So little calculation here would be, okay, we've got the 500,000 that's left on the mortgage, with that investment portfolio, assuming that your wife is uninvolved with the real estate, and doesn't want to manage that. Then you might be having her sell that portfolio and ask the advisor to drop your investments risk profile down to like a 70/30 on all assets. That way you're targeting a 6% after tax return. The expenses, when you're making 350, but you had 18 grand of expenses. So if we paid off the debt, that brings your new expense down to 15,500. We're going to bump that up to 20 for our calculations to provide a cushion and kind of a covering to replace the stuff that you used to do. That also, hopefully, with a little bonus there, that allows them to increase their giving. But key to understand that when one spouse dies, the other spouses expenses don't cut in half. That's definitely not the calculation there. For the kids, if they're going to do college, you can kind of generically choose the thought that college might cost around $250,000 per child. Or like I said, you can put that towards down payment on a home, starting a business, something else. So if you were to try to come up with, I want a $250,000 balance set aside for each child by the time they turn 18, if you're getting a 6% after-tax return, which we're not talking about the ideas of you can save through a brokerage account or 529 options to get the tax savings there, or whole life policies. For a 13-year-old, you would need to put $190,000 away to have that grow to be $250,000 by the time they turn 18. For the 11-year-old, it'd be $165,000. For the 8-year-old, it'd be $140,000. Again, with that 6% after-tax return, that will compound to be $250,000 by the time they turn 18. For a 40-year-old wife, if we say a life expectancy of 95 years, then at that 20 grand a month, that's $240,000 a year. So if we say, what is that going to be? How much money do we need set aside for that with inflation? And so the answer to that is it's going to take $6.6 million if it gets a 6.5% return. Again, after tax, if it gets a 6.5% return with a 3.5% inflation. And I don't think inflation is getting back to 2 anytime soon, if ever. So I'm counting 3.5% inflation, which is a little bit on the high side. And so anyways, that then produces, you need $6.6 million today that you could then take $240,000 out of, per year out of, and not run out of money by the time your spouse turns 95. You're going to factor in, so then what that calculation looks like here, you're going to factor in lowering the risk on some risk on the private equity and real estate, that if you're trying to sell some of those or something didn't go up the way you planned. So I'm going to drop that portfolio from 2.5 million down to 2 million. I'm going to say, okay, so I've got 2 million there. I've got $500,000 to pay off the mortgage. Those numbers I added up for the kids comes out to be 495,000. So let's call that 500,000 as well. So I need $1 million there. We've got 6.6 million to produce all the living expenses for my spouse. So that basically comes up with, I've now got a $5.6 million shortfall. So I can look at that and I can go pick up a $6 million term life insurance policy, or you can look at some permanent or some blend thereof and use that to then start to figure out, what do I need my estate plan to look like? Now, beyond this, there's a lot of tax considerations that we're going to talk about. If you are over the 13.61 million is the federal exemption for today. And so that's double for the spouse. So 27.22, that is set to sunset at the end of next year. If you are going to be above that and you haven't done planning there, you can't wait a year from now and try to do that toward the end of 2025. You will miss most of the best planning techniques. You need to get after that, honestly, really soon. We need to make sure that in the next episode, we're going to talk a little bit about revocable, irrevocable trusts. Then we're going to talk about some generation skipping trusts, Q-tips, ILETs, and some of these more sophisticated, more complicated estate planning strategies. So I hope that's helpful to you. And if, like I said, if you've got questions, you need to get some clarity on anything, please reach out, and we're happy to help. Take care, everyone.
Thank you again for listening to Wealth Well Done. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player, and together we'll continue to improve our relationship with money and our effectiveness in stewarding it well.